down.
All right, so why don't we move on to Bill Mulligan, and what's your first pick, sir?
Uh, to tell you the truth, thinking about this, I don't get scared by horror. I wish I did, and I think I've actually been chasing the rush that I got the one and only time a movie really terrified me. And I guess I'm thinking this is back when I was maybe 9 or 10 years old, and it was The Blob. And I'll say that every movie that has scared me has been watched on TV. I don't get scared when I go to the movie theater. For one thing, I'm surrounded by people. The only one, well, if I get to it later, if I can stay long enough, the only one that scared me, that I felt terror in a movie theater, was at the Blair Witch Project. And it wasn't even that I was really scared, but the fear in the audience was contagious. And that was a unique experience I don't think I'll ever feel again. But The Blob terrified me, and it was so wonderful. My sister and I were visiting our favorite aunt, who never had children of her own, but so she kind of adopted us and took us on trips, and she was wonderful to us. Everyone should have an aunt like that. And she had one of those big giant old TVs that was more TV than screen, the exact opposite of what we have now. It was black and white, and for the longest time I really thought The Blob was in black and white, and I prefer it in black and white. It's blood red in real life. It has actually very nice color, but on a black and white TV, that red blob is pitch black and absolutely terrifying. And for those of you who haven't seen it, The Blob is a movie about aliens, and it's the most alien that has ever been portrayed. This is nothing like anything that exists on Earth, maybe amoebas. It is, you can't reason with it. It has, as near as we can tell, no intelligence, though who the hell knows? What its purpose is, nobody knows. He's in a meteorite, an old man pokes it, and everything goes bad from that point on. It's just a moving lump of silicon that consumes people and grows bigger. And that's it. And this movie, for a 1955 or 58, somewhere around there, for a movie of that time, the body count in this is off the charts. People who die are completely innocent, did nothing wrong. And it's got Steve McQueen. He's at least 35 if he's a day, but he's a teenager. He's what I love the charm of this movie, where the juvenile delinquents are they're Boy Scouts. They're the most unjuvenile delinquent kids ever. The adults are amiable goofs. Everyone is well-meaning and loves their kids, and even the antagonist, the mean cop, you sort of understand where he's coming from, because his wife was killed by a drunk driving teenager. So of course he has a grudge, but even he comes through in the end, and it's really, really good. But my sister and I were watching this on TV, and we were absolutely terrified, because the whole movie is just, this thing is going from person to person, consuming people, getting bigger. Nobody believes the two kids who witnessed it. And while they're dawdling away, it's just getting bigger. And we would beg my aunt to please turn the channel. Please turn the channel. She'd turn the channel, and there'd be about 20 seconds of us watching whatever was on the three channels, the other, Carol Burnett or something. And then we were like, we got to find out what's going to happen. So turn it back. And she'd turn it back. And that would last until, the poor mechanic is working on his car, and all of a sudden you hear, and then his legs get pulled under. I mean, this is a 1950s movie. We're not going to see extreme gore or anything. And then we'd beg her to turn it off again. We did this about 3 or 4 times. And finally, my aunt had the patience of a saint, but she had had enough. And she told us in no uncertain terms, this is it. I'm turning it back on for the last time. If you ask me one more time, it gets turned off, and it stays turned off. And we knew she meant it. She was not a strict woman.
That's how you teach kids to, stick it through.
That's right. And so my sister and I just clutched each other like little monkeys, and just watched it trembling all the way to the bitter end. The end, which ends with a question mark. So, okay, good night. I'm like, oh my God, that was so terrifying.
It's amazing.
And it was so great. I love that feeling.
How old were you, Dan?
I think I was like 9 or 10. I mean, we were young. We were just kids. And I'll never get that feeling again. I'll never capture that again, especially now that I've been in movies. I've been part of creating movies. I know how the sausage is made. And, now when I watch it, I'm thinking more, how did they do that? How did they pull that off? And really, the only thing that scares me is like a jump scare, which is a cheap scare, but I'll take it. Just it's fun to get that little, when it's done well. I remember there was one shot in Haunting of Hill House that really got me. I think when the two women are in the car and all of a sudden they're not alone. Okay, I didn't see that coming. Did not see that coming. That's cool. But that's pretty much what it takes to scare me now. How do you get... I'm too old. I've seen too much history to get under my skin. I know the real atrocities that go out there. I wish they were committed by monsters.
Yeah, I'm with you, man.
So that's a good point.
What can scare you? Maybe a master like a Hitchcock, or something like Psycho, where everything comes together, the editing, the music, and all. But those have all become cliches now. It's hard to see. I love horror. I will always love horror. I look forward to seeing what the next big thing in horror will be, but I doubt very much that it's going to scare me much. For that, I've got to go back in time.
That's a really good point, though, about like monsters not being that scary to you. Because I think it's the same for me. Like every single film that I considered mentioning for this session, all of them are because the actors were really good and their characters were terrifying to me. It's always humans. It's not monsters. It's not jump scares. It's just really good, realistic people being creepy for the most part. I mean, Henry put up Suspiria for the poster on this, and yes, that was,
I love
not
that
a realistic film by any means, but I was the whole entire time I was just like, what's gonna happen?
Right.
But for the most part, it's
the
people. It's the atrocities that people commit.
The ad for Suspiria is one of the scariest things I've ever seen. I saw it on TV. I'm staying up late to watch an old movie on TV, and all of a sudden there's the back of some woman's head and someone's brushing her hair. And
I never saw the ad for that.
You got to see it. They've got creepy ass run. Roses are red, violets are blue, and then she turns around and she's a skeleton, and then we see the pulsing Suspiria. And I was like, don't do this to me. It was 2:00 in the morning. We didn't have a VCR. If I wanted to watch a movie at 2:00 in the morning, I set the alarm clock for 1:50, got up, and everyone's asleep. And I'm watching it on the TV, quiet. I got to put it quiet because everyone's sleeping. My house wasn't that big. And I'm alone. I'm basically alone. Everyone's asleep in this house. All the lights are off. I'm close to the TV because the sound's low.
Oh no!
There's this skeleton in my face. Get out of here.
I think that's actually why Rec got me so bad. It's because I was like watching it on a laptop and I was just like really, really close to it. And I was like,
Rec is really absorbing. I think that's a masterpiece, I think.
But Kaelyn, what you're saying, to me, it's true. The ones that really scare me, the monsters. Has anyone ever seen? I'm sure this group you have The Vanishing.
I still haven't seen that. I don't think.
I don't want to give any of it away.
It's on my long list.
If you've watched the American remake, you wasted 2 hours of your life. You'll never get back. So go watch the original.
I have the soundtrack, and it actually says that in the liner notes.
I'll just tell you this: it is the best portrayal of a sociopath that's ever been put on screen. Because
that's a big
guy. This guy is not twirling his mustache. He is a jovial family man, respected, and this is the great part, he knows what he is, and is just he's curious how far can he take it. The fact that he feels nothing. He's done heroic acts and he felt nothing, so he asks himself, would I feel anything if I did the ultimate terrible thing? And what would that be? Oh my God, he is absolutely compelling. He's the most interesting character, and you're watching it, and it's scary. I do not know. And I don't know if I've seen him in anything else, but he was awfully good.
I'm actually going to go out of my way to write that one down to check out because I'm officially intrigued.
It's hardly ever streaming. It's another one of those that just doesn't stream.
I believe it's in the Criterion collection, though.
Oh, it ought to be. It's so good, so masterful.
Well, I'm going to piggyback to use Keith's phrase. I'm going to piggyback off of Bill's comments. When I was really little, there were a few commercials for horror movies that absolutely fucked with my head, and they didn't always live up to it years later. One was Beyond the Door. Now, I had never I never saw a trailer. I'm not saying it didn't play, but I never saw any trailers for The Exorcist. I saw it in the newspaper. I saw that they took out a huge ad, and the exorcist is at the street, the mansion is all chiaroscuro lit. And I was like, what the hell is an exorcist? I was very young, so I didn't say that. I was like, Mommy, what's an exorcist? And of course she knew because she was a brilliant reader. Well, an exorcist is blah blah blah. Which that didn't make any sense to me. I was kind of like, what's the movie about? Like, it makes you think that the monster is the exorcist. That was how I thought. But I never saw an ad for that on TV, but I saw Beyond the Door. And it's not that great, but it was, I guess, the preeminent Italian, because that is inevitable. Italian knockoffs. It's probably the most famous. Chi is the real name of the movie, but it has Juliette Mills. And I've tried to rewatch it twice in recent years, and sometimes some parts of it are fun, some parts of it are boring, some parts get pretty crazy. And it's like the trailer just like took the few parts that were crazy and like jammed them together. So you think the whole movie is just like a nightmare. And that voice, I don't know who does the voice in that one, but it imitates the Mercedes McCambridge voice in Exorcist and is almost creepier, almost, not quite. And that when I saw that and heard that voice and she's turning around, I ran from the den all the way to my room. My grandmother's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I don't want to see that." And and then but yeah, for ads, a lot of the crazy ones used to trip me out, like some of the slasher movies, but the one that really was the pivot for me, and I guess a turning point, though I didn't know it till 10 years later, was so in 1979, 1980, I was watching Saturday Night Live, and after Saturday Night Live, I would watch SCTV. So, in between them or toward the I can't remember if it was toward the end of Saturday Night Live or at the beginning of SCTV, there was this very stark white background and these letters are moving this way and it spells zombie, and then it shows the the worm-eyed zombie popping up real fast, and it goes, absolutely no one under 17 will be admitted to scenes of extreme gore and violence, and and I was like, I was terrified to see that movie for fucking years. And now Fulci's like one of my very favorite filmmakers.
Yeah, that cover was one I definitely found terrifying as a kid when I saw it in the video store.
That worm-eyed zombie, man, Gianetto De Rossi, he is so, everyone talks about, I mean, some people give him props, but people talk about Carlo Rambaldi rightfully and Tom Savini, Greg Nicotero. But I mean, Gianetto De Rossi did a lot of, he did the effects for Living Dead at Manchester Morgue, which was gorier than Night of the Living Dead, which was a riff-off, much gorier and very realistic effects. But he kind of found his niche with Fulci, and yeah, those zombies are just incredible. I mean, that's the trip. Anyway, we won't get on to that, but I will talk about the one that scared me a lot when I saw it, and it's kind of reverberated with me. It doesn't scare me anymore, but it wasn't from when I was young, though. The kind of things when I was young I mentioned. So I avoided extreme horror movies. I'm the total opposite of what I am now. I wouldn't watch gore. I wouldn't, I couldn't handle it. First time I saw The Exorcist on TV, and it was cut, of course. That was the first time it had aired on CBS. I was like 12. My whole family was freaked out. My dad, least of all, but we all were glued to it. And we got a prank call during it. And that freaked me the hell out.
Oh no!
It was probably one of my classmates. I have no doubt. Oh, they're watching The Exorcist. But it was a big deal when it played there. Then, of course, I didn't know how much of the scenes were cut out. My mom had the book, and then, of course, when she became born again, she sold it along with all the other great books she had. But yeah. So I'll let Justin talk about The Exorcist here in a sec. But Suspiria I rented in 1992, and I had never heard of Dario Argento. I mean, I had my elements of cult film, but I was really it was coalescing. 1992 was kind of like my renaissance year for all this, and got me addicted to doing this. And so I would rent a ton of movies from Cockbuster, and that was one of them. And I just saw it, and I was like, oh, it's Jessica Harper, who I vaguely knew who she was, and she has this purple. It's very weird purple. It's one of the more sedate posters, but it's pretty to look at, and it says Suspiria, and I was like, oh, this is like really Baroque looking. I think this is interesting. So I took it home, and I started watching it, and of course the kill.
Was it this edition?
Yes, that cover. But on the VHS, it was a little more purple tinted. It was the Magnum video one.
Well, this is Magnum. Maybe this is different because this is the letterbox version.
It is, yes. Yeah, I didn't have the letterbox version. Yeah, it's very similar. So the killing stuff in the beginning. I mean, of course, I was just learning to really appreciate cinema, but I mean, I was immediately blown away. It was kind of the feeling I got when I first saw Twin Peaks. I was like, this guy's an incredible director, and I barely know what a director does right now. But like, I knew
Mhm.
Hitchcock, I knew John Carpenter, I knew a few, but not many. And I was like, oh my God. And that just blew me away. The whole way it's orchestrated. It's almost like a Rube Goldberg skit. One thing is this way, and then the catch is the neck, and then it's like then the thing crashes, and the stuff exactly eviscerates the girl. I mean, it's pretty
Yeah,
impossible, but it's
Mhm.
powerful. And
yeah.
he almost
Inferno went even crazier.
yeah, and the beginning of Phenomenon when the girl walks across the bridge, that's similar too with that incredible music by Bill
Yeah.
Wyman. Um, but yeah, so I kept watching, and my roommate went to bed. This was my best friend at the time, and of course he was a know-it-all about movies, and he really didn't know as much as he thought he did, and he still doesn't. He still talks about the same 5 or 10 movies 35 years later. And I'm like, for a guy who's part of the horror community, the horror genre is a lot wider than John Carpenter, George Romero, Wes Craven, David Cronenberg. Not knocking any of those, but if that's kind
They're
of where
not
his
all there
head is
is.
at. His head is stuck there,
Yeah.
and so when he sees people like Argento, he's very skeptical. He was very nasty toward the Italian directors. He was like,
Mm.
bullshit shit, and Argento's
Mhm.
overhyped, slick bullshit. And I was like, okay. And it turned out, my good friend Tim McLean, I think had talked to him about Argento, and it's like Jason never really sat down and watched an Argento movie all the way through. It was all just a pose. Oh, I said his name. He might sue me. Um,
Yeah.
I try to never do that on these videos. Sorry. Jake was his name. And so I watched it and he went to bed, thinking it was silly, and I was captivated. And then I laid in the dark, and there's a scene where all the girls are in the little huddle after some crazy thing happens at the academy, and there's a bunch of sheets here like in a hospital, and they're like snuggling up like in a what do you call them? You know, I can't think. But so yeah, they're all kind of like snuggling together. And it's not lesbianish, but I guess you could also fish around for that. I know some people have in that movie, and that's legitimate.
I don't
I
see
can
it, and if I don't see it, I kind of wonder.
well, the one I wonder about is Barbara Mangolfi's character, and she is
Mm.
such a flamboyant person. Her roles are always very small, but you
Mhm.
never forget her. And I friended her on Facebook, and she's like a relentless self promoter. I mean,
Hmm.
he's just like, I was in Suspiria. I was the mean girl in Suspiria, you know. So it's like, well, as long as she's making a living at cons, bless her heart. Um, but yeah, I think she was probably wanting to seduce all the girls. But
That's
um,
fair.
on the
But
other
that scene in
side,
particular,
It's like kind of like in the Harry Potter movies when they have them all sleep in the Great Hall, so in case there's an attack.
yeah, though a different cultural shift, but yeah, basic idea. So behind the curtain, they hear this wheezing, and that's
creepiest
the old
sound I've ever
woman.
heard in my life.
That's the woman who owns the academy. I'm thinking, why is she downstairs sleeping? And what? Why would she be there? But my brain was like, didn't stop and question the plot. It was just like it kept wheezing, and the girls are like, "Oh my God, that's her. What is it?" And they think she might be a witch. Of course, what is her name? Marcos, Elena
Elena
Marcos.
Marcos.
Yeah.
Hello.
And I got during that scene, I got the name, even though I didn't read the translation. But I was like, Suspiria, respiration. Okay, got it. And the mother of sighs, because they call her that in there. And after all that, the ending of the movie was very anticlimactic to me. I mean, I've accepted it since then. It's just, fine. But, um, it kind of ran out of steam in the third act. But those first two acts, man, oh my God. They're pretty relentless.
Yeah.
And Goblin's
Mhm.
music is absolutely
Yeah.
fucking relentless. And I
Mhm.
One
heard
of
them
my
play.
favorite soundtracks.
I was telling these guys, Bill, I was telling these guys I saw them in 2013 at a club, and they were loud beyond words, and I
Mhm.
forgot my earplugs. So I went out to
Mhm.
the balcony to listen, and it was blowing me away. It was all incredible. And then they started to play the la 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 la. I like ran in there, and it was loud as shit. But I was like mesmerized, and they were showing these scenes I'm talking about on
Yeah.
screen, and then
Oh, it's cool.
they segued into it was either the Tenebrae, the soundtrack, or it was the Jennifer theme for Phenomena. But anyway, they did those back to back. I was, they both had a great reaction for me, and then I went back to the balcony. But it was just I had to see him play Witch. I mean, it was just too. It was just too. As a once in a lifetime. My ears will heal. So that
Worth
one
it.
scared the shit out of me. What?
I said worth it.
It was funny
Yes.
because one time Jessica Harper was asked if she was ever scared during making of the film, and she was like, only the part at the end where the stuff was actually being thrown at me and there was a risk of getting hurt.
Yeah, a real fire was happening. Yeah. Argento's like, it will be okay. We don't need those American safety contracts. We'll take care of it. And the Italians were all guerrilla all the time. It's just Argento made people think he wasn't guerrilla because his stuff was slick and polished, but he was still, working with very little money. But he was a great orchestrator of chaos. That's what I would call him.
Is
So
he
that's
the guy who made the house with laughing windows?
No.
No, that was Pupi Avante, who a lot of people
okay.
love that movie just as much, if not more, than Argento's movies. He also did Zeter.
Zeter is amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Pupi
Those
Avante
are
never
both
really
on my
got real
watch
far.
list, but I haven't seen them.
He worked, he collaborated with Argento a little bit, and everybody who kind of collaborated with Argento when he hit kind of had some limited success. Pupi Avante and of course Lamberto Bava, but he was already Mario Bava's son. Michele Soavi, he went on to do some really wild movies of his own. But that whole culture's dead. I mean, that Italian genre cinema is pretty much over, and it's sad.
Is there a reason why? I mean, why do you think it?
The economy, the culture, I don't know. I'm not sure. Argento keeps pumping them out, and sometimes they'll do one that's halfway decent, but mostly they're very forgettable to me, and sometimes
a lot of these
downright lousy.
Yeah, a lot of these European countries had brief periods where they were subsidizing or giving tax breaks for film, and you'd see a wave of German films, then a wave of Italian, and once those tax breaks dried up, so did the industry.
Yeah,
it's baffling,
right.
And it comes very sudden, very quickly.
Everybody became like Europe started to become more like America. So if you wanted to make an incredible movie that was like taboo or violent or weird, there's plenty of them now. But man, you look at the credits in the beginning, and the sponsors are like a mile long. Studio Canal always funds. They co-fund everybody. There's some companies, and then they have to like get money from this. So it's the tax break I've seen in the credits a couple of times, but Cronenberg made like 5 movies off that tax break in Canada. I mean, it's just that was so incredible when I read his Cronenberg on Cronenberg. But okay, so Justin, talk to us about this evil movie.
Oh, okay. Well, the second film I was going to talk about was The Exorcist, which everyone's seen it, and I think it's a franchise. There's other versions.
Yeah, there's a new one out now too.
So I'm gonna confess real quick. I actually haven't seen The Exorcist because it's one of those that I'm like, I know this is gonna give me a bad time. I don't know if I want to watch that. I mean, I probably will eventually get around.
I have to admit, I wasn't scared by it. So.
I was traumatized by all the spinoffs growing up.
Right.
Like,
well,
I will
say
the sequel is wild and underrated. So
y'all talked about
the sequel is the one with Stellan Skarsgård.
Like in the 2000s, and like they would always come on during me seeing other movies, and I wasn't into horror yet at all. So like those trailers would come on, I'd be like, like absolutely not able to handle it. And I was just like, man, I'm just trying to watch this good science fiction movie here. Leave me alone, please. And then
you're getting a good education. I mean, a lot of the stuff you've seen is much more extreme than The Exorcist. And
I mean, yeah, like I said, I'll probably get around to it eventually. It's just one of those that I've avoided for a long time.
I
as
understand.
we all do with some
And
things.
one line was
Well,
particularly
I won't
famous
give any
during the
spoilers away.
Clarence Thomas hearings because Jack McGowan says there seems to be an alien pubic hair in my drink, and they kept asking Clarence Thomas if he'd seen The Exorcist, and he's like, "No, I haven't."
Oh my God!
Oh my God!
All right, Justin, go for it, man. We're gonna yield the floor to you, okay?
Well, maybe I shouldn't give too many spoilers away if Kaelyn and others might not have seen it, but
I'm familiar. I'm familiar with it. It's
Yeah.
one of those that I have read about, but I've not actually watched. So go for it.
I think I heard so much about it as quite a young person before I actually saw it that I kind of knew what to expect. But it is a pretty terrifying film because it's in the back of your mind that depending on your level of faith that that it could actually be these sort of real things do actually happen. But it's based on a book by William Blatty, and I'm not sure who the director is. I think it's William Friedkin.
William Friedkin.
Friedkin.
Yep.
Friedkin.
He just
He
died
just passed
recently.
away recently, yeah. But it's also got some amazing acting performances from particularly Ellen Burstyn. And she does smoke a lot. It's sort of it's a period piece in that everyone seems to be smoking
Right.
at tense moments. It's like when she lights up the priest's cigarette and he lights her cigarette up in tense moments. It's a bit like that because the priest
It's
smokes
awkward.
a lot as well. And the priest is a great character as well. I'm not sure the actor, but he was
Jason Miller,
amazing.
yeah. He's
Jason
incredible.
Yeah,
Miller.
so,
he does give an excellent performance.
Yeah,
I didn't know
Damien
who he
Car-
was when I
Damien
saw
Karras.
it.
He was a playwright.
So there was sort of a sensitive part of the film too, an interesting sort of tangent on the film, and that it's about Damien Karras, the priest, and his who is he's not the exorcist, but he helps the exorcist. But
He
his
becomes the
relationship with
exorcist.
his relationship with his very elderly mother who lives in New York, and while he lives and works in Washington D.C. at Georgetown, and that's another good thing that it's set in Georgetown. And he
Mhm.
goes to visit his mother in this impoverished tenement somewhere in New York, and she passes away eventually, and he's got this guilt on his complex about how he might have abandoned his mother, and that sort of plays as a sub theme or subplot in the film, and that works quite powerfully
Guilt.
because
Catholic guilt.
at the end of the film, interestingly, the demon who is basically possessed Regan, the young daughter, plays on that guilt with Damien Karras by talking about how he's abandoned his mother. So the demon knows all about his life and tries to throw things out there to throw him off his game. It's also famous, this film, for the famous Exorcist stairway. So when I did a tour of Washington D.C.
Uh-oh.
about
Oh,
no.
past what
It's the devil
the
this
big
time.
bus tour goes past the famous Exorcist stair where that's a spoiler, but somebody gets pushed down some stairs, external stairs at
Mhm.
one part of the film. So it's really one of the scarier films. It's I don't quite know how the relic from the Middle East, which is featured at the very start of the film, this idol from the Middle East, which I think is the source of the demon, somehow
Mhm.
makes its way from the Middle East to Georgetown in Washington in 1973.
Well, there's a lot of allusions in the movie and in the novel, and then they start explaining more of it in the sequels. But from the time he found that idol, Pazuzu, and also in the Stellan Skarsgård, the prequel, they depict that when Pazuzu encountered him and vice versa, they became like mortal enemies. So Pazuzu is, periodically pardon the pun, bedeviling him on purpose.
Yeah.
That's why when he comes in there and everybody else is like, what the hell's going on? Or it's the devil. He knows exactly what it is, and he knows that it's drawing him to it deliberately. Like, in other words, it's not just a coincidence. Oh, he's a great exorcist. No, Pazuzu wanted them to
he is the
select
same
him.
character. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I think on about the second time I watched the film, and I've seen it quite a few times, I made the link between the exorcist who comes in, I suppose, 3/4 of the way through the film, and the same priest who was in the opening sequence in the Middle East. So
Yeah,
that's
Max
the
von
link.
Sydow.
So yeah, Max von Sydow. So another great performance in the film. So it's basically there's a lot of pale imitations of The Exorcist, and I think this is one of the originals. Don't get too distracted by the makeup and the gore for Linda Blair's character. I think that's sort of the hokey part of the film. The real,
Mhm.
I
real
think it's
strength
pretty
in the film.
effective.
It's effective, yeah, and it's gross, but But I think the real strength of the film is the building of suspense and the slow
Hmm.
deterioration of, well, not reasonably slow deterioration of Regan's character as a
Yes.
young daughter.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd recommend it if you haven't seen it. It's pretty damn good film.
It's one of those movies that's kind of ubiquitous, but
Hmm.
still, like when Scott mentioned, I don't know about The Shining, is it too mainstream or whatever? So, I don't want y'all to worry, I mean, about any of that. I mean, we could always do another session some other time, maybe not Halloween, and dig deeper into movies that aren't as well known as some of the ones we've chose. But they are key films, and the idea is if they affected us that way, that's I think Kalen's
Mhm.
premise really is, just how they affected us.
Yeah. Like all of
So
us individually, and just kind of to see, like, psychologically what gets all of our goats.
mhm. Why don't you go
Yeah.
ahead with yours, Kalen? Thank you, Justin.
Sure.
Okay.
So I actually have a couple in mind, and it's kind of hard to choose one. So I'll mention both of them, and
Okay.
just one can be the honorable mention. The one that I
Okay.
mentioned that I didn't care for, that I found utterly terrifying, was Tusk. Um,
No,
Good Lord. Like, that's one that every moment of it that I was watching, I was like, why am I watching this? Why am I watching this? Why am I watching this? And
it
then, like,
it it's weird. It's a
I
weird
got through it, and
movie.
I was just like, I could have done anything with those 2 hours of my life, and I watched this.
So you didn't like it at all?
I didn't like it. I really didn't care for it. And
Now, is it
like,
because it was scary and disgusting that you don't like it?
I think it's because it's scary and disgusting, but to me there wasn't enough of a payoff to make it worth it. Like, I don't mind like body horror and stuff like that in a film, as long as I feel like there's a point to it. And that one, I was just like, this is just a
Yeah.
bizarre premise, like blown up to the nth degree because they could. And that's also just Kevin Smith, and Kevin Smith is very hit or miss for me, so
Hmm.
that's part of it too, just
Hmm.
not my
He's
style
he,
of
he's
film.
only missed nowadays.
That's fair.
Mhm.
No,
That's
I
fair.
haven't seen Clerks 3 yet. That's the only movie I've seen.
Neither
I'm
have
kind of
I. I've seen
scared to
the first
watch it.
third one.
What I wanted to say about Tusk is that I'm in the minority of people. I mean, when it first came out, it was pretty well received, but now it's fandom is kind of, yeah, has about the same opinion that you do, and I
Mhm.
like it. I mean, it is
That's fair. I'm
difficult.
not saying it's like just a straight up bad movie that no
No,
one
no,
should
no.
like.
I
I'm
mean,
saying it was
I
not
get
my taste.
it has plenty of flaws, but I think first of all, it has a structure that when he did the movie with Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez. He got big cinematographer and George Carlin and some other big actors, Liv Tyler. And he was like, my movie is shot like Hollywood, and this is real beautiful. He didn't want to go to Hollywood, but then he's like overwhelmed with, hey, I'm getting
Hmm.
some money, and I'm going to tell a story that's nothing to do with Jay and Silent Bob. So for what it was adequate. I don't know if I recommend it. I can't remember the name of it right now. If
Hmm.
y'all
You
do,
talking about
please let me
Jersey
know.
Girl?
Yeah, Jersey Girl. I
Yeah.
mean, I liked it when me and my ex-wife watched it the first time, but after that, after three, five, seven more times, I'm not the biggest Ben Affleck fan. I think he does okay in that. But my point is, with Tusk, he had already done Red State, and with Red State, he's shooting in this raw, kind of modern horror monochromatic stuff, faux verite, and I thought this is a huge technical leap ahead for him. And the
Hmm.
plot was great and based on that insane church. I forgot what they're called, the Goldboro or Westboro.
Oh
But
yeah,
Westboro
Westboro.
Baptist
Oh my
Church.
the
God.
pro the
Oh.
problem I had with that movie, I mean, this is just kind of weird, but and it's unlike him, is the characters who were captured and mutilated and killed, and then when they have the standoff with, of course, the FBI. The
Oh, you're
only
talking about
character.
Waco?
No, no, I'm talking about Red State. um,
Okay.
it's a movie. No, it was theorizing what if the real life Goldsboro Baptist Church, got in a shootout like Waco. But
Ah,
Hmm.
before that they don't just boycott funerals and say nasty things. They kidnap corrupt kids and torture and murder them. So
There's enough of that in real life,
yeah,
hmm.
they're a cult. But I like the fact he did that. I mean, in the
Yeah.
context of Kevin Smith, I think it was a triumph, not a earth shattering or anything, but he pulled it off. It was
Hmm.
serious. It was not funny at all. And John Goodman, near the end, he becomes kind of the heroic figure. I mean, not by any action or anything, but because he kind of sees a few things about this. And one thing is these people, yes, they're militia nuts, they're true believers. And Michael Parks is incredible as the cult leader. And he's incredible in Tusk. Kevin Smith wore that guy out before he died. He's like, all right, I've been in another movie. And so did Quentin Tarantino. They both like jumped around with him. But I'm glad he got a new generation of fans. But once you get into the aspects of the apocalypse, the rapture, and John Goodman and his other guy, I can't remember the actor's name, but he's been in a lot of key movies. He was in several David Lynch things. But they kind of concluded, not officially, but that horn that was started blowing when everything happened, that was not a real horn. There were no horns in the vicinity. Horns don't quite make sounds like that. And John Goodman is willing to entertain the idea that the cult leader had some kind of contact with some kind of god or demon, and something apocalyptic would happen. But since they killed them all, I guess they cut the link. So the sequel, the demons come and kill John Goodman. Okay. But anyway, it has a lot to respect in it, even though it has a lot of flat. The torture porn scenes, I mean, they're visually pretty cool, but they're a little flat. Again, the kids are not likable characters. So John Goodman as the FBI guy is the only really, and then of course Michael Parks is very charismatic. So coming off of that, Tusk, though, he went back to trying to make a conventional, really wonderful looking movie like Jersey Girl, and he really succeeded. The structure and the photography, just the building, like where he comes to meet Michael Parks, I thought it was amazing, and just from a cinematic point of view, and the idea is sick and it's silly and it's stupid, but then when he starts doing it to him, it's really horrible.
Yeah, it is, and that's why I found it so scary. Like,
I mean,
this guy is very messed up, and I really wish he had chosen therapy instead of this. It's kind of
I mean, I will say now that I'm talking about it more, because I sold my copy a while back. I sold all my Kevin Smith.
I intended for this to be a quick mention, by the way. Let the record show you're the one who's running with it.
No, we'll get back to you. Just that Tusk is that period for Kevin Smith, that was kind of the end to me. Because he made those two back to back. Not everybody liked him, but it got people's attention because he was experimenting. And he had gone completely indie. He left every studio distributor. He made his own company. He even broke off from Vincent Pereira and their thing they had been doing for years. And he did his podcast, and he did other podcasts. And then he started putting those movies under that imprimatur. But unfortunately, they did, a sequel to Tusk, Yoga Hosers, and it was just like terrible.
That was like also terrible, and that one is one that
terrible.
I didn't like because it was actually just not good.
See,
I didn't like Tusk for taste reasons. I didn't like Yoga Hosers because
I love Johnny Depp as that Clouseau like character in Tusk, because he's just gobbling up the scenery, and he's obviously doing kind of a riff on Sellers, Clouseau. And then the way they credit him in the credits, not as Johnny Depp, but the character's name, like he's a real person. And that's kind of cool because that gives you that meta thing. So his idea was, hey, I'm going to bring back that character, and he's going to rescue these two girls played by my daughter and his daughter. And unfortunately, there really wasn't much else to it. They were fighting these stupid little, dude.
God, yeah.
And then the Jay and Silent Bob reboot was even worse because
I haven't even seen that one. I'm not even gonna see that one.
It should have been great, but I will tell you from a psychological point of view, it really tracks with how much he's changed over the years, evolved in some ways, devolved in others, and also just how fucking much marijuana he smokes in a given day. And he doesn't and it doesn't in any way. He brags about it, and I do think it's infecting his writing. I don't usually think that about people who are brilliant. So Kevin Smith might not be brilliant. Maybe he's just really good. But, who knows?
Yeah.
So did you want to say anything more about Tusk or another movie that you were talking about?
So since that one was meant to be a quick aside,
Sorry.
it's fun. It's also really
couldn't
funny you mentioned
resist.
John Goodman, because the other one that I actually want to really like go into is 10 Cloverfield Lane,
Okay.
in which John Goodman plays one of the scariest dudes I have ever seen in a film
Who
ever.
left?
What'd you say?
That was Justin.
Oh,
He
Justin popped off.
he
Yeah.
must have texted me and I didn't see it. I'm sorry.
It's-
He's cool. He does that. But go ahead.
Yeah.
Bye,
So,
Justin.
10 Cloverfield Lane, which is part of the loosely related three something that has Cloverfield in the title films. The first of which is Cloverfield, which I loved. Also, another fun found footage movie example, since we
Yeah, it
talked
was
about that
pretty fun.
recently.
Mhm.
And then 10 Cloverfield Lane, and then the Cloverfield Paradox, which I have not seen and I heard is terrible. So I'm
It's
kind of
awful.
putting it
Sorry.
off, putting it off because I liked the other two. So I'm just like, no. But 10 Cloverfield
Okay,
Lane
that's
is
Justin. He just said he's sorry. He had a great time. So he had to
Aw.
go. All right,
Hi,
continue.
Justin. Hi, future Justin, if you're listening to this.
Well, Justin and Francis were meeting for the first time. I know they didn't really get to talk much, but I'm glad
Yeah.
at least they. So go ahead.
He had to meet face to face. So 10 Cloverfield Lane, basically the premise of that one is this young woman, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, is leaving her husband. She gets in her car and goes. John Goodman's character hits hers with a car. There's this big car accident, and she's severely injured apparently, and wakes up chained to a bed in a bunker and has no idea what is going on. Enter John Goodman's character and basically explains like, hey, I didn't know how you were going to react. I had to do this for reasons.
Well,
But I'm
thanks.
trying to help you because we can't go outside for I don't even know how long. We live in this bunker now. Let's be a family. And it is very fucking creepy. So
It is.
it just
Sometimes
kinda
he seems
escalates from
really.
there.
Sometimes he seems very lucid, and other times he seems pretty cuckoo.
Very cuckoo. He is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and just man, and it's basically like what's going on with his character is like psychologically he is very damaged because his wife and daughter left him at some point in the past, and he's basically trying to rebuild the family that he wanted. And he does that by kidnapping this young woman, and basically he wants her to be like a replacement for his daughter. While she's in the bunker and exploring it, she finds a piece of jewelry that another young woman was wearing at one point. So she's just like, oh no, I'm not even the first one he's done this to. So that's messed up.
Mhm.
And he basically like this is a true you are being gaslit film. Actually using the term gaslighting correctly here. He basically spends the entire time that they're in this bunker for I think it was like several months or something like that over the
Yeah.
course of the film. I haven't seen it in a while, but
Oh, you're right. I think.
yeah, basically convincing her like, the world outside is dangerous, you can't go out, you have to stay in here or you will die. There's also a man in there who was assisting him in construction and setup of the bunker who ends up staying with them as well. They devise a plan to try to escape. John Goodman's character ends up killing the construction assistant guy pretty horrifically with some acid. And it's lovely, absolutely lovely. God. And then
Can't stand the acid.
and then she also tries to escape. She ultimately ends up being able to escape. She goes outside. The air is apparently fine, but there's aliens attacking because this is a Cloverfield movie. So suddenly aliens, but the aliens aren't even the scary part of the film. It's freaking John Goodman's character in the film. And
Yeah.
I think the
John
reason
Goodman
that
is
one
a great villain. Like, look at a film like Barton Fink.
He's got a great range.
And like guys, you have to remember I was a 90s kid. I grew up like watching Roseanne, so he's like dad, okay? And then like seeing him play these really terrifying villains, I'm just like, oh god.
Once he started doing like the Coen Brothers stuff, and he's doing more comedy but more kind of outrageous comedy.
Yeah.
And then he started doing dramas, and I was like, man, this motherfucker's got some range, man.
Yeah, he's got chops. He is a
talent.
really, really good actor.
I always love seeing him in a movie.
Yeah, it was actually David Byrne was like the first one that cast him in a movie in True Stories. That he was a Broadway actor
Oh,
before
I
that.
did not know
I
that.
didn't know that either. That's cool.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah, they
Scott.
mentioned in the making of, nobody knew who John Goodman was when they made it, but they quickly realized how good an actor he was and they beefed up
Hmm.
his part.
There's an 80s
Nice.
horror movie where he has a tiny role as a cop, and I saw it not long ago, and
I
I
think
want to
it's Chud.
Dead Heat, maybe.
Hmm.
Maybe it is Dead Heat, but it's around that era.
I know he played
Mm.
a cop in Chud, which I haven't seen, but I do remember seeing it on
Oh
his
yes,
filmography.
maybe that's it. Yeah, okay. Go ahead,
Hmm.
Kim. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I'm digging all the trivia that I didn't know. That's actually really cool, so thank you. um, but the reason that that one is so terrifying to me is just because of this honestly realistic character. Things like this happen to people, minus the aliens in real life. You know, people just go absolutely freaking nuts and kidnap people. And like, whereas, you know, Tusk has kind of a similar concept of like somebody being kidnapped and tortured and gaslit and psychologically just absolutely screwed up. It's a really bizarre premise, but then 10 Cloverfield Lane, like with just, oh, I'm gonna gaslight this woman into thinking she can't go outside. You know, his character probably actually does think they can't go out, but you don't know for sure. It's something that could feasibly happen, and like seeing that as a woman and seeing that as someone where it's like this could happen to me is utterly freaking terrifying. And also the context for this is that movie also came out when I was in a not so great relationship with a not so together person. I'll just put it that way. So there was also the very real fear of like, not to say that I was actually worried about something to that equivalent happening to me for real,
No,
but
I understand.
I could really empathize with the character, you know?
Well, you don't know at a certain point, even if you know the person, you don't know how far they're going to go with being possessive.
Right.
Mm.
Right.
And usually they're okay, but you know what? You never know. Women have to be careful.
Yes.
In
So
my
I
opinion.
think that one, just like gender wise, I think is one of those films that is very, very, very scary. Because it's, you know, just the acting is magnificent. John Goodman's character is absolutely menacing. He'll like go from being all sweet and friendly to this like not even like overtly like violent until it actually gets to that point. He would just kind of very quietly and calmly tell you, I'm not happy with what you're doing right now, and I will have to punish you if you keep this up, basically. Very fatherly in a very creepy way. So it's just like, oh yeah, so that's why that one really got to me.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
That kidnapping thing is really, yeah, I mean, because it happens so much in real life now, we're finding all over the world. And
Yeah.
you know,
It's
at
like
least
I thought the first part of From Dusk Till Dawn was more effective than the vampire part.
I would
That's
agree,
entirely
except
fair.
Tarantino's terrible actor. Just
Oh,
terrible.
he's not good.
But his character is very disgusting, though, and yeah, he's kind of like you're what we're alluding to. Us kidnap some women and rape them and keep them around a cage. But one disappointment I had with the now very famous movie Room is you see Room. I don't mean the Room. Tommy
I know, it
Wiseau.
took me a second because I was like, wait, Room or The Room?
Room with Brie Larson. She won an Oscar for it. I was expecting, I think most people are expecting that when the cops come and rescue her and her son after all those years, that the story is at least somewhat going to vindicate her and punish this disgusting man who they stunt casted, the same guy who was a disgusting husband in the movie The Woman by Lucky McKee, which I love. Uh and no, it's just like they took him off and then they really focused on the little kids readjustment. And I guess that's different. And that's why it's a different angle. It's a very legitimate angle. But damn it, I wanted that rush of karma, man. Because that
Yeah, I
guy, I'm
get
like,
that.
you never know why he kidnapped her. I mean, you know, so many things you don't know. But I guess it's just told from the kid's point of view, that's unimportant. You know, the kid is living in the now, and then he goes into this new world and he's trying to figure it out. So I'm not really a big fan of little kid point of view movies. They can be good, but usually I don't like them. This one was fairly well done, but I was like, the crime really would overshadow a lot of that. And that's what you're expecting. But But
Mhm.
anyway, there's been tons of other movies like that. Yeah, 10 Cloverfield is interesting though. Yeah, the trick of where you don't know if it's been an apocalypse and that or not,
Mhm.
you know. Um,
Yeah, just
so
guessing the whole time, and then you get to the end and you're like, oh, okay, there actually was, but it's only relevant in the last like what, like 10, maybe even less minutes of the film.
mhm.
Honestly, it's very brief. It's very, very brief. Like the whole thing is just in this bunker. And also, I hate confined spaces. And I hate being indoors for too long. I need fresh air. So like the idea of having to live in a bunker in and of itself is also just I would rather not. That'd be great.
Right.